Welcome to Men Unfiltered, a podcast that looks at men today, addressing what's changed, what needs to be restored, and modeling the God-ordained role of man himself. His responsibility as provider and protector, leader and lover. This show sets out to destroy the current narrative that has an apparent mission to emasculate men and purposefully restore them in an empowered position by addressing accountability for their own health, money stewardship, and commitment to leaving a legacy. Unashamedly, here are Men Unfiltered.
It's another Monday edition of Men Unfiltered. I'm the real GM, the health evangelist, Grayson Marshall Jr., and we're 2 minus 1. One's on the way. So I'm joined tonight by none other than
On the Grind, Coach Chris Allen. As always, man, it's always good to be here on the show.
So we are back another Monday, and tonight's a little different because we actually are doing a part 2 of the mental state of Black men. And I want everybody watching now, watching later, to realize that we normally don't address a specific group of people on the topic just because we want to give a broad perspective. However, in light of what's going on with so many people, we decided to take this on. So last week's conversation was informative. It was very opinionated. A lot of people chimed in, and tonight we pray that there's no different, but we kind of either finished or didn't finish, so we decided to do part 2. So of all you that are watching tonight, this is Monday edition of Men Unfiltered. Your comments are always welcome, and we want to know what your thoughts are about the comment of where the state of Black men are. I was looking at some stuff today, and it says statistics show that only 25% of men of color will actually go seek help for where they are mentally. And it listed some causes and some reasoning. And it gave, I was looking at something, it gave out 6 reasons. So I'm going to drop these 6 reasons in the pot right now just to begin to start the conversation. So we talked last week about why men don't go or they're hesitant to go. And these 6 things that stand out kind of line up with that, but I just want to get your opinion on them, everybody watching now and watching later. And let me know how this is seen by you, how you think society sees it. Is it relevant? Is it necessary? Are these statistics even true? Because I think that every time we look at where people are where they could be, it's based on our own perspective. It's based on how we see things. And not often do all people of color see things the same, for sure, or vice versa. But these are the 6 reasons they give. Number 1, throw some dirt on it and walk it off. This is the mindset that especially old school kids, and I would call myself an old school kid, received. You just got to walk it off. Be a man. Walk it off. That was the way you dealt with it. There really was no way to release it other than that. Just put up with it. That's how you do. And especially if you're coming from a place of what most folks would say unfairness or
It's just an old way of thinking.
Yeah,
just an old way of thinking.
Yeah, if you come from that space, then you would be that way. So throw some dirt on it. Number 2, boys don't cry. There's another reason men don't seek out to get any help mentally from where they are. Number 3, stay out of our business. There's a belief among many guys that health concerns, relationships, and family businesses are private. They're not to be shared with others. Number 4, I'm not stopping and asking for directions. I know where I'm going. Many family road trips feature to drive around until we maybe get our destination. Some guys believe that they aren't lost and don't need help. This pertains to driving to vacation getaway or struggling with their stress, depression, or anxiety. It can be very challenging to guys to seek help. The 5th reason, no big deal, I'm fine. When dealing with health and mental related terms, many guys downplay the symptoms and pain that they're feeling. To some guys, it's easier to avoid and downplay the issue than it is to admit there's something wrong and deal with it. Number 6, I'm not singing Kumbaya. I hate the smell of essential oils, and I'm not laying on the sofa spilling my guts to a stranger. the atmosphere is not conducive, they feel, for themselves to share from their heart. So out of those 6, Chris, do those make sense to you? Do those
Some
are
of them,
those explanations, or are they just ways of defining what we don't really want to talk about? In other words, is there really a problem with the mental state of people, or have we gotten to a place where if we're not accountable and we don't do the things that we're supposed to do, there's an out that we can now claim is a mental place for men that we don't want to go to. So now that's my excuse. Is the old school mentality wrong?
I don't think the old school mentality is wrong, but I think it was birthed from a place of trying to protect. You got to understand, it's less than 60, 70 years. Within the last 60, 70 years, as a black man, you couldn't even look at another black man in the eye, a white man in the eye. You get slapped. You know what I'm saying? So we're not too far out from the Jim Crow laws, and where you had signs that said, you know, as a black person, you can't enter into a particular establishment. We're not talking about a long period of time. And so as a black man, that has to weigh on our subconscious that you're seen in the society as lesser than. Whether we have pulled up our, laced up our shoes and, really went out there to grind to try to create something better for ourselves. In the reality is we're not that far off from the way things used to be. Are we doing better? Absolutely. But I think that from a subconscious space, I think that it's still there. And so when we talk about those, you don't cry, be a man about it, all those things were just birthed out of trying to protect, not necessarily the right way, but just trying to protect you.
So in the world today, we weren't far removed from it. So we look at the 60s, the 50s, or whatever. That's 70 years ago, 80 years ago when we're looking at it. But is it okay to still use today as an excuse?
Well, I don't think we're talking about the matter if it's okay to use that as an excuse. I think this is really talking about the subconscious of the black man in this world that we're living in. You know what I'm saying? I don't think we're talking about excuses, because I don't think anybody on here can say, well, you use that as an excuse so you don't have to do better. I think we're talking about, do you think that there is a psychological, you look at people like Kanye West and Kyrie and all these entertainers and folk who are, Kevin Hart went through that. Martin Lawrence went through some stuff. You know what I'm saying? So when we're talking about the mental state, I think it's more prevalent. I think it's something more there than just putting a Band-Aid on, talking about, well, just man up, don't cry, be a man about it. I think it's more too. I think I really believe, man, that when we come back during time and they really do some studies on the black race, I think PTSD is going to be something that's going to be, they're going to find traces of that. I really do believe that they're going to find that post-traumatic stress disorder somewhere along that gene. And it has been passed down for 400 plus years ago, when you had to act a particular way in order to even survive. Because if you didn't act a particular way, those things were birthed out of, well, you might come up lynched.
So based on what you said, it is an excuse still for today. If we're still going to, if we can look back at it and say it's still affecting us today, then it seems you're saying is that it's still excusable today. It's still something you can go to and justify however you feel today based on what happened in the past.
Well, we don't even know how we feel, because like you just said, statistically, it says less than 25% ain't even gonna get help.
Yeah, but
so that means that if less than 25% even gonna get help, then why is the other cultures going to seek out the help? Why are we under?
Well, which we're choosing not to go. You look at the same thing. We're choosing to listen to the music we listen to. Nobody makes you listen to it. You're choosing to do it. Everything is choice. So at the end of the day, we're choosing to do it based on history. So my point is, do we allow
choosing not to do it based
on history?
Right.
So do we still allow that history to be a reason for not doing it today?
Well, hold on. We're not, according to you, we're not going based upon history. We're not going based upon what we were taught. And the narrative that you're saying is, are we using it as an excuse? So
Right,
if we're creating that narrative saying, well, you're just using that excuse, then how many more black people or black men will say, well, I'm not going to go checked out, even though I feel something going on, but because the narrative is I'm using it as an excuse, I'm not going to even go.
No, I'm saying that. What I'm saying is their history is their reasoning. That's the reasoning for not going. It's what they've been taught. Chris, what they've been taught is their history, right?
No, what they've been taught is man up. What they've been taught is suck it up. What they've been taught is we don't want nobody in our business. What they've been taught is ain't nothing wrong with you. You just a little off. That's what we've been taught. So therefore, the narrative is don't go because ain't nothing wrong with you. Suck it up. Be a man. Okay. That's the narrative. Okay. So that's why the statistic says that less than 25% will even go and find out. Why is Uncle Bubba sitting in the back room? Something going on with Uncle Bubba, but we just sit him in the back room. No one even thought, well, let's go put Uncle Bubba on the seat and find out what's going on here psychologically. Because remember, Uncle Bubba was the one who went through some stuff. So psychologically, there's some things that's there that we don't even want to even consider. There's a problem.
Why would we not want to consider it being a problem? It's not that we don't recognize that there's a problem. We recognize the choices how to handle the problem. We have decided to, because this is the way we've always handled it, we want to handle it that way. I'm saying that even though we know it's different now, why are we still doing those things?
I agree with Donna. Going to therapy has been a stigma in the Black community. We don't even, that's been a stigma because go ahead.
That's fine. It's been a stigma, but how long do we leave it as a stigma? That's the point. That's what I'm getting at.
That's why we need to have more narratives saying more of these types of conversations so it's okay.
So you're asking a narrative to define where you are. We're still taking away the onus on us. You want to deal with, we want a narrative to say it's okay to go. We want permission again. And it's the same reason we stay stuck.
I don't think we're focused looking for permission. I think the narrative has to change in order for how is it in other communities it's acceptable, but in our community it's frowned upon.
Because we have decided that this is the way we're. Why is it acceptable?
Why have we decided that?
Because we don't choose to change.
Why?
I don't know why. I've chosen to change. I don't deal with this narrative. That's what I'm saying. I know there's a bunch of people who don't deal with this narrative anymore.
Okay.
But if you're saying that this is the majority, then why are we still doing that? If that's the case, Chris, then we're still in a slave mindset. Would you agree?
I think there's some still slave mindsets going on.
So if we're in a slave mindset, that has everything to do with you because you are no longer a slave unless you choose to be.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact of the matter is, well, she said not necessarily permission, but more conversation around therapy.
There you go.
But hold on.
That's why we have this conversation. I think even when we go to church, everything is birthed upon a conversation, right? Before you knew about Jesus, something had to happen, right? You had to have a conversation with some people talking about Jesus. And then the Bible says that we even hear by what? Hear it and hear it and hear it and hear it.
Come by hearing by the word of God. So, but here's the reality. It's what you're choosing to listen to.
Absolutely. That's a whole nother conversation. This topic is there mental health disorders in the Black community.
Mental health disorders are literally based on, just like you said, a narrative. The narrative needs to change. Who changes the narrative?
We do.
So it's a choice.
So right.
So here's what you're asking. You're asking a system that still exists to adjust for you.
No, I never said that. Never said that. What I said, no. Don't put words in my mouth.
Well, who changes your narrative?
Hold on. I never asked the system to change anything. I said I never asked the system to change anything. All I'm saying is, Black community, it's okay to go and sit on somebody's couch to find out what's going on with you psychologically, because you might be going through some things that you can't really identify. And you need some therapy. Don't listen to the narrative of you're gonna be okay. Just pray it away. Jesus got something better. Now you need to go. Hold on.
Who delivers that narrative, Chris?
So you can tell the folk what I'm saying.
Chris,
I'm not asking nothing about the system to change. I'm saying Black community, we need to change. How do we do that?
Well, hold on, Chris. What you just said was the narrative of go to church and pray it away. That's what you just said, right?
That's one.
Hold on.
That's one.
Who delivers that narrative?
What do you mean who delivers it?
Who says just go to church, pray it away to be all right? Who's delivering that narrative?
I don't know. You never heard that before? I don't know the first person who said it, but I know I've heard it.
Where do you hear that? You said in church.
No, I never said that. I never said that. Listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me clearly. We're talking about a narrative that you've been taught, right? Where did you hear men don't cry? Who told you that?
My house.
Your house told you that, or somebody in your house told you that?
Somebody in my house told me that.
Somebody in your house told you that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So who told you that black men just suck it up and just suck it up and just get over it? Who told you that?
It was never about a color that told me to suck it up. It was about men. That's what I'm saying. It was never
Where'd you get
about
that narrative from? Where'd you get that narrative from?
My father.
So is that true?
What do you mean? Is it true?
Do you believe that narrative is true? That men don't. So therefore, what you feel that. So what you're saying?
I don't believe. I don't believe that narrative is true. No, I don't believe the narrative is true.
So you even though you was taught it, you don't agree with it.
You're making my point for me, Chris.
That's what I'm trying to say. So everything that we've been taught wasn't right. But so we've been taught. Listen. We've been taught. Don't go to counseling. Why? Because we don't want nobody in our business, right? That's why if you look at statistically, that's why that number is very, very low. Because the narrative that we've been taught growing up is wrong. The reality is, if something is going wrong with you mentally, if something's going on, if there's a disorder, something's going on, it's okay to go seek help and therapy. It's okay. That's the conversation tonight.
Who labels you as having a disorder? Who labels you as that?
So you don't believe that there's disorders now. So now that's a whole other conversation. Hold on. We can't, Grayson. You and I are not going to battle on this conversation. That's what we're not going to do. But the reality is now, if that's another conversation, is there really a mental disorder? That's another conversation. And according to you, you don't feel that there's a mental disorder.
All I said was who gives you that? Who says you have one?
So is it real or not real? That's the question.
I believe it depends on who you're talking to, because you'll still believe people today that say the world is racist.
Okay, we're talking about mental disorders now. So the whole conversation is, according to you, you read the stats, and it talked about less than 25% will even go seek the help. So if they're not even going to seek the help, how do they even know if something even is wrong or not, Grayson? That's the question. Why don't we even create an environment where we even go seek if there's something wrong?
And so my question to you is, how do I know that there's a problem? Who told me there's a problem? Who told me
that's one right there.
If you feel off?
That's the question. If something is going on, you know whether something's going on with your regular. If you're going around, you slapping on people or you upset, something's going on. Just like we've been married and your marriage is not working, you might need to go get some help. It's called marriage counseling. Why do we normalize everything else, but that one particular thing now is of us? Who told you that? Why do we do that? That's why statistically it talks about less than 25% even gonna go. Because the narrative that we've created around it is bad. The narrative that we created around it ain't real. Do you agree or not agree?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Because I believe there is a true position of accountability in the individual.
What about marriage? Is there true accountability in just marriage? If they don't work, then why do we go seek help?
If you want your marriage to work, who do you have to change?
Okay, why do we go get help then?
Yourself.
So there'll be no reason for no marriage counselors then.
Here's the deal, Chris. I can go to marriage counseling all day long. If I don't choose to change, there is no change.
Self accountability, great. I'm with you, 100%.
Correct.
So now you So even though you're self accountable and you want to change, why do you still go seek and get help? I'll tell you why. So you can walk through your process. It's so you can walk through it. So you can get it right. So if you got something going on mentally, you know something's jacked up. But if you could fix it, guess what? You would have done it. But since you can't fix it, you just have self-accountability. What's going on? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like every time this person says something, I want to slap the taste out their mouth? Why do I feel that way? Now we got things called triggers. We got these buzzwords. We got triggers. Right? We got shadow work.
That's the whole point. We got names for everything.
Names that we have to deal with.
We create names for stuff we don't want to face. Just like Just like you deal with gender, just like with pronouns. Something we don't want to address, we redefine it. It's easier to redefine than to address. That's the reality of life. We redefine anything we don't want to address, no matter what it is. We make it permissible. If there's enough supporting documentation to make it okay, now it becomes either a phobia or a new state, and we never fix it. We just redefine it, just like pedophilia. Pedophilia now has been redefined as minority attracted people. So pedophilia is gone. Now they're labeled minority attracted people. So we're not dealing with the problem. What we're doing is we're relabeling everything. So there is a male and female. There's
Donna,
a male and female.
have Donna chime in on that. This
Donna,
isn't the conversation I thought it was going to be. What? Expound upon that, Donna. Ain't that the psychologist?
I don't know. It's not a debate, Donna. It really isn't a debate. The reality of it is that I guess that looking from it from my perspective, I don't see it as something that we're choosing to do. I believe at times we allow ourselves to flow into certain things and we accept them. And all I'm saying is I don't know why we have to accept that. That's for me personally. When it comes down to, and I think part of it is when we redefine and put the word black in front of it. I think that does change things. And I've said that before. Whenever we lead with the color of anything, it reduces the problem and focuses more on the color.
Well, I think that's the stat that you said. Then why did they preface the color in the stats?
Well, I think that's what they do, and I believe that. I believe that our world still wants to.
Who are they?
Who's ever redefining stats? Who's ever putting stuff out there? I think we've allowed that to happen, and we follow it in a certain way. Why do Black people spend more than others? I think that again is a way to kind of separate and temper where we are in the world.
But my question to you is this: so why did you read the stat? What was the purpose of reading the stat?
I read the stat because it said that only 25% pursue it. That's a stat. That's what they say. Here's my thing: 25% are pursuing it, and you said, well, they're pursuing it based on something being wrong, and you said they only pursue it. Well, you said they pursue it or they don't pursue it because of how they've been trained.
Yeah, we were talking about why is it so low? That's the question. So why is that stat? Because according to your stat, is the lowness compared to the other ethnicities, right?
It's 40% of others, 25% of ours.
Right. So and why is ours under? That's what we were going with that. Why is ours lower than everybody else's?
And I believe ours is lower because of the fact that going and speaking about a problem that I have to someone who may reflectively look like the problem becomes a challenge. See, I don't believe.
What do you mean by that?
And we can look up the statistic. How many counselors of color are there as opposed to counselors that are not of color? Because I don't see how you can really address an issue if it's your color or something pertaining to you as an individual with someone who's not of your color. So I think that's part of the problem too. We don't have enough counselors of color where they feel comfortable going in. Because if I have an issue with race, am I really going to be forthcoming in a room with somebody that's not my color?
Well, that was the conversation that we kind of had last week when you asked me which one I wanted to go to. And I said I wanted somebody to kind of, but I don't know if that's necessarily why the numbers are so low. I don't know if necessarily because you're trying to seek out a Black counselor as opposed to a white counselor. I don't know if that's why that number's so low. Because I'm pretty sure you're gonna have both. You're gonna have Black counselors and white counselors.
I'm not saying both can't do the job. What I'm saying is that most of these, Joshua says, no, we don't. They can't relate. See, to me, I still believe when you put the color in place, and that sets, you put that before anything. Whatever adjective sets before anything, the adjective becomes more powerful, and that becomes a real issue. So I do believe that because there aren't as many Black counselors, if my issues are of my race and those are the reasonings behind who I am and my challenge, I don't see how I can feel comfortable going to somebody who's not of my race to understand the struggle I'm going through.
Well, last week you said it's because the counselor could be biased.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? That's what you said last week. You said, why would I go to somebody? Because now my bias becomes they have the same types of bias.
So if they, I'm saying, so you're asking a lot for them to be impartial, which they should be because of their three. But just like us, we should be impartial too. But that's not really the case because we feel some type of way. If it's someone of another color or race or whatever, we might be struggling with. So I'm not saying I'm not saying they are. I'm saying that if we're talking about allowable comfortability, then folks are going to be more comfortable. Why is it that 11 o'clock Sunday is the most segregated time in America? When we're all about the same Jesus, right? Yet when you go into churches, you'll find them either predominantly black or predominantly white. Now, nowadays you'll find more mixed congregations, but you'll still find that the worship service is more geared towards what I like or what they like. That's what it comes down to. So if we can be divided over the things of God, then we can be divided when it comes to certain things. I know people who will not go to a doctor outside of their own culture. So Hispanic people like going to Hispanic doctors. I know that. Indian doctors like going to Indian doctors. You know what I'm saying? They like why? Because they understand the native things and all things. So I believe that part of this, because I don't believe that they're not going because they don't want help. I believe that part of why they're not going is they don't find a safe space to express it.
Could be.
Nobody understands. So my point is that's my saying. So how long are we going to make that the case is my only point. It's not about debate. How long has that become the case? Because here's the deal, Chris. If I don't have that outlet's not there. If I don't have it, how long does that become my reasoning for not changing is my point. If it's not available to me, if it's not there to me, do I continue to not go because the things don't completely line up? That's my whole point. I took it to where the accountability and responsibility is here. I think oftentimes we tend to take where we are and whether we want to or not, we still graft in historical stuff that really still has residue of today, but does not completely drive the behavior today. Yet there are a portion of people who use that as an excuse to drive the behavior. So all I was saying was, how long are we going to use that if we're using that as an excuse to not get healed? We can't continue to consistently in life look at things and have them be the reasoning I'm not there. That's why I said the narrative. When you talked about pray and get over it, that's a narrative that came from us. Give it to God. Let God take it. That's a narrative that came from us. I heard that from my community, right?
That's what we said earlier. That's
my point. But my point is our community is still promoting it. We're still saying that it's not okay, right? So why isn't it where we stand and say, you know what? No, you are great. I don't have to go to if you came to me right now and said, bro, I'm not feeling good about myself, I wouldn't say, Chris, go see no counselor. I'm going to talk to you initially from here, bro. Look,
so
you made this.
You will be the counselor.
Well, no,
I don't care where it comes from.
Well, hold on. Where it comes from. I think that's where you have to be specific because you said go lay on somebody's couch.
Because maybe they don't have. That's where accountability comes from, right? So maybe this person may not have a brother where they can go to and say, "Hey, man, I want to share some stuff with you. You know, last night this happened with my household." But I think the thing that you talked about first was having that safe place, right? Some folks don't have that safe place.
So that's my point, Chris. I think the reasoning that this needs to be clear is because I think when you say go get help, the majority of people are looking for help from someone medicinal or classified or qualified. When the Bible clearly talks about if you want to be healed, go to your brother. If you want to be saved, go to God. You want to be healed, go to your brother. I think the reason that part of this is in a space is because we don't have within our own community a love and trust that I can go and have this conversation. Right. So I don't think it's so much more of me laying on someone's couch. I think it's internal. So to answer your question, why do the other ones not do it? I think because why do they do it? Yeah, why do they do it? Because I believe there's a greater level of trust amongst them. Because of what's happened to us historically, we don't trust. So at the end of the day, we going to ask somebody, it's not because they can or can't help us. We don't trust them to begin with. So the point is, if we're going to change, we've got to decide at some point, I got to trust somebody.
There you go.
So if we don't trust them, then it's not there. So when it comes down to it, and my point was, if I have trust issues, Chris, and my trust issues happen to be racially motivated or racially founded, then why would I go and talk to someone who looks like my problem?
But then you can't. So what you're doing is there's two different dialogues. So but it still comes back to the mental disorder, right? It doesn't really matter who you're going to seek. So if I have if I'm feeling like I'm feeling a little off and I'm feeling a little crazy, but I also got this racism thing going on inside me, I'm not gonna go sit on some white guy's couch talking about my issues with white folk with a white guy who's on the other side of me. That's probably not gonna happen. Mm-hmm. But I do know that something's going on with me. But therefore, you have to take that self accountability and say, well, I'm still gonna go and sit on. I'm gonna find me a black counselor. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna find me an Asian counselor. But the accountability still lies within you to say, I'm going to seek out the help. Just like we're gonna go seek out the help on anything else. If I'm married and I'm going through marital problems, yeah, I could go talk to Grayson and Evie. I could go talk to them about my problems, or I can go talk to somebody who has been certified in marriage counseling. You see what I'm saying? So the reality is, it's still got to come from me to say something's going on. I'm gonna seek it out, and it may come. I'm gonna go talk to Evie and Grayson and realize y'all don't know what y'all talking about either. So I'm gonna go talk to somebody else. Y'all don't know what y'all talking about either. Before I actually go and sit on somebody else's couch. Right. You know what I mean? But It still comes back down to their self accountability of saying, I need to seek this thing out until I get healed.
Right. And again, I don't believe that there's a world of people who don't want to seek it out. I don't believe there's anybody walking around that says, I don't want answers to what I'm going through. I don't believe that. I believe they all want answers, but I believe that what's prevailing over the whole thing is a lack of trust.
Okay.
And so when it comes to so it doesn't matter who the trust is. And I don't think the trust is directed towards a specific place. I don't trust, period. So here's the deal. If I don't trust, what I really don't trust is myself. That's the first place I have to trust. I don't trust myself, right?
Okay.
So now what's happened is that because I don't trust myself, I don't have a good opinion of myself. No one externally can give me a better one. I have got to get a better position on me. Even if I understand, even if I realize that my trigger is social injustice or racism, even if I feel, okay, I've identified it. If I still don't do some personal work, that's not going to be the case. And most counseling sessions aren't usually directed towards you doing personal work. Most of us are still looking at the external problem.
Right.
So I believe what's happened is that men, especially, and I'll take black off the table, I'm gonna say men have always put the external in priority to their own internal. So now they want to, and because of our wherewithal to fix stuff, our wherewithal to bring solutions to, is to everything outside of us, where the true solution is on the inside of us. But we're not taught societally to deal with the inside of us. And then when we do feel like there's something wrong, who do I trust to go talk to? Mm-hmm. I believe that in other cultures, there is an open trust. We have been so divided since the influence of the Willie Lynch mindset that we don't trust there. So I don't believe my point is the state of the black mind is to me directly related to the state of mind that I am as a person, not so much societally. And if I don't address me, then there's going to be a problem. And all I was saying to you was earlier, how long do we allow that to be? Because in order for you to go get help, you have to say, look, I'm tired of this.
Yeah.
And so my point is, how long are we going to have that be a narrative? How long does that become the reason why we're doing stuff or not doing stuff? That's all I'm saying. My whole purpose whenever I talk to people is really about removing the excuses, removing the narratives that we'd held tight to because they've been comfortable. I mean, think about somebody who wants to start a business, right? Is it harder to start a business in the world if you're black?
It's hard to get a loan.
Hard to get a loan, but is it harder to start a business?
No, we can start a business right now.
So, but is there that belief?
What?
That it's harder to start a business if you're a minority?
I'm pretty sure there is.
I believe
you're pretty sure you're going to have some folk out there say it.
Right, but it's not going to stop anybody who's determined, right?
Right.
So I think that yes, as long we can acknowledge There's nobody who is uneducated enough to present to us an argument that history has not affected Black men. There's nobody that can say that. You'd be crazy to say that. But my question is, you're talking about the narrative needs to change. So my question to you, Chris, now, who changes the narrative?
We do.
Is the conversation on the couch changing the narrative, in your opinion?
No, so, I think we changed the narrative by making it acceptable to go and do what you got to do.
Right. So
change that narrative when you're talking about why we don't trust. We got to change that narrative.
Correct. But doesn't that happen inside of us? See, here's what I'm saying. If you tell me, Grayson, you got to trust more. And I say, well, you know what? I'm going to the counselor. Do you believe the counselor is going to teach me how to trust more?
Mm-mm.
So at the end of the day, that experience, and I believe this is where people are, that experience isn't going to get me what I need. I think that's more of what they believe than whether or not the whole narrative still exists.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get the answer that I need from laying on that couch? I think that becomes it. Can I learn trust on that couch? No, the only way I can learn trust is experience. I've got to be willing to go back out and do that. I've got to be willing to give somebody else a chance. In relationships, if your marriage doesn't work, if you want a relationship, don't you have to go and get into another one? You got to get into one. You got to work on you, but you got to get into a relationship, because if I don't get into one, I'll never have one if I desire it again. Mm-hmm. I think there becomes a point to us where in having our desires, I think culpability and accountability have put us in some sort of controversial challenge, because I'm culpable for the things I do. I have to be accountable for the way that I think about what I do. Mm-hmm. And I really believe we stay away from the thought and we really focus on the action. Men have always been problem solvers. So I think that resonates more with people than anything else. How can I fix the problem? Because I believe that's what men do. You and I both know men are problem solvers, right?
Uh-huh.
So why
do you equate that to the black? Did you say black? That's
no. I'm saying,
okay. All right.
I'm saying, but I mean, the nature.
You're talking in general.
Yeah, we're problem solvers, right?
Okay.
So again, here becomes the dichotomy or the challenge. If we're problem solvers, then why do we hesitate solving our own problems?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think it's so much of the problem as opposed to our priority. I think our priorities have always been so external that our internal need for resolution and peace goes by the wayside. So all of these things historically have been there, and I've heard them all and lived them all. But I think at some point we've got to, you said, change the narrative. We have to change the narrative within ourselves by the actions we take toward each other. I think that improves the state of the mind.
I think that improves it as well. Mm-hmm. But I think, when I talked about the narrative, I think the narrative that we tell each other in our own community, you know what I'm saying?
Right, correct.
I think that's the narrative that I'm more so concerned. I'm not looking for, I'm not looking for the Asians or the Hispanics or I'm not looking for them to say, hey, it's okay. Look, we over here getting some help. So, it's okay. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying those of us who are inside of this community who are preaching the wellness and if you want to get better physically, you better go get your trainer. You know what I'm saying? And if you want to get if you want to get your basketball skills go better, guess what? Go get you a coach. We teach these things, but then when it comes to the mental health, sometimes now that's when we say, okay, step back. You on your own on that. No, there's help for that as well. Go and find out what's actually going on, and we have to create that narrative saying it's okay. Just like we would tell you about everything else, it's okay. Right. Marriage counseling, physical count, all that, it's okay.
But I don't think they think that things are wrong.
Right. Of course not.
Right. So that I think that lends to the fact that most of us don't go because we don't think there's a problem. And It's not that there's not a problem. I think that what we are in and what we're involved in makes us feel like there is no problem. In other words, what we've accepted as role models, what we've accepted as conversation, what we've accepted as lifestyles, what we've accepted as ways to live, we don't think there's anything wrong internally. Mm-hmm. We look at everything wrong externally. And I believe we've got to get to a place where what's really going on inside, no one's ever told me, no one ever talked to me about what was going on inside. Nobody talked to me about it. And it had nothing to do with my color. Nobody ever talked to me about what's going on inside. To me, that was more of a man narrative than it was a black man narrative. But it was a man narrative. But for me too, I didn't subscribe to it as a young guy because I didn't buy into not being enough. I knew it wasn't fair. I knew it wasn't equal. I don't want to say fair. I knew it wasn't equal. But I knew that this was my lot in life. And what I believe sometimes is, Chris, is that we underestimate the assignment that we've been given as people of color. Because I don't believe that, again, if we believe God won't give you any more than you can handle, then there must be a reason that we were chosen to carry the weight of what's going on in the world in the way that we've done it. So I think oftentimes we look at it as a punishment and look at it as something of a reduction. And oftentimes I look at it to the point of, man, there's got to be something in me that we were able to withstand this and do this. Why were we assigned to do this? Why was I given this assignment? Why was I born this way at this time to be this? Because I know me, if I'd have been born earlier, I know I wouldn't have been here. I know me. The time when it comes to it. But I think that if we really look at the state, the mental state, let me ask you this. What is a healthy state of a male or black male today? What would a healthy state look like?
I can't answer that. I'm not qualified to answer that.
No, what do you think? Let's just speculate. What would those entail if somebody's in a healthy state? Are they working 9 to 5? Are they being good fathers?
Yeah, I would think that there will be some things that I can look at externally that I would picture you must be in a good state. But we've seen people who we picture they were in a good state. Next thing you know, they end up committing suicide. So we don't actually know what's going on in that mental state. We can look out from the external all day and say, oh, man, you got 2, 3, 4 beautiful children. You got a beautiful wife. You got this nice big old house. You got plenty of money. You on this show. You making this and this. Next thing you know, commit suicide. So I think that's I think it's a hard one because now we're looking externally, trying to figure it out. There he is.
There we go.
There he is.
What's going on? I'm sorry, fellas. I had a customer I was dealing with.
So we don't. So Chris, if we don't, so my point is, how does he know that there's something wrong?
I think it's the internal feeling. It's not for us to look at. I don't think it's for us to look externally and tell you what you're dealing with internally. I think that's the internal feeling of what's going on with inside of you.
Correct.
How do you feel? Like if the guy, if Twitch would have felt what he was going on internally, and he felt safe enough to express what he was going on internally, outwardly, what would the outcome be then? Because externally, he lived a perfect life. Externally,
again,
but we don't know what's going on internally.
Right, imagery is everything. But again, that to me is something that he, as an individual. So, if based on that conversation, then why didn't he go get help?
Why?
How do we know he didn't?
Well, we don't.
So again, so it's kind of so let me ask you this: if someone goes and gets help, is it guaranteed that they'll make it and survive?
I think that's the root of help, isn't it? That whatever you're dealing with is fixed. Ain't that what the root of help is? You really didn't help me if you really didn't help me if it didn't work, if you didn't help.
So again, you're asking someone else to control how you deal with what goes on in your life. You didn't help me, so here's what happened.
No, you said, did he go get help? Well, did it work?
Right, but I said, so how do we know he didn't get help? No. And he said, well, isn't that what help is? Then if you didn't help me, then look what happened.
No, because I think your next narrative was, if you go get help, doesn't necessarily mean that it worked or something. That's where you were going. Doesn't necessarily mean that you just because you go lay on somebody's cup doesn't necessarily mean that you got the help that you needed. No. Just because you go and lay on somebody's couch don't necessarily mean that you got the help that you needed. If you still ready to kill yourself, you didn't get help. Ain't that what the purpose of it is? If I go to you for counseling and you don't help, can I say your counseling worked? It didn't work. You didn't help me.
Okay, so again, you're making my point. So you're asking for external help to define who you are internally, right? That's what you're saying. If my counseling didn't help,
no. It starts. Go ahead, Grace, Adrian. It starts with the internal. It starts with the internal first. You get just like marriage counseling, just like any other counselor. It starts internal first. You got to want it. You got to want to get this thing help.
I think in all aspects of life, and I'm just chiming in. I was listening probably about a couple of minutes before I jumped on, right? And I think when we're dealing with help in general, yeah, we can look for external help all day long, or we can look for internal help. We don't know how to change ourselves, and it's biblical, right? If we're looking at us from a mental standpoint, if he who counsels with himself is a fool. So there is initial internal work that has to take process, that has to be processed. But many times it's going to come from an external source. That's why I've always said, if you need help, if you want to be saved, go to God. If you need help, go to your brothers, right? Like if you need help. So there's going to be an external force that's necessary for us to shift the way we think in our entire culture. Looking at it from a let's say a psychological standpoint. One of the things I read years ago, and I can't remember the author of the book, but one of the things he said, and it kind of haunted me for years on it, and it was a curse. Slavery was a curse for both the white and black. Why? Because it made white believe they were superior and made black believe they were inferior. So that's what I've been taught majority of my life. I don't even understand why I have these thoughts that I'm beneath someone else or I'm not good enough, because that's the way I've been trained majority of my life. What we have to begin to do is start to see that we have certain flaws inside of ourselves. Us as men, we've talked about it on many different occasions, that we don't even know who we are. Right? We don't understand emotion. We don't understand what we're feeling majority of the time. Majority of the time, we're hurting inside, but we can't release that thing because no one is, everyone has taught us that was weak. So the external forces have to come in. Professionals have to come in, but we've been taught that's uncool as well. And that's weak for asking for help. So it's a lot of chains that have to be broken surrounding mental health, dealing with African Americans, because we don't know what's right and what's wrong. We've never been taught that way, right? We've never been taught that if we have an internal problem. I remember my mother telling me specifically, never tell anybody what's going on in our house. That's something you live by, regardless. Never tell anybody what's going on in your house. But as men, we're dealing with competitive nature every day. We're dealing with frustration. We're dealing with pain. We're dealing with stress from external sources. And we're seen to be supermen. We have to be the Superman at all costs. So I think, the healing that needs to take place is internal, but it's going to take some external people to help you identify exactly what the problem is to be able to shift the internal.
And when the external folks are still modeling the old behavior in a new way, that's what makes it tough. So the people that we've lended role model status to and everything that we look up to, when they still are underneath it all, still keeping us subservient and keeping us still stuck, promoting lifestyles that don't move us, promoting lifestyles that do this, I don't think anything's wrong. So it keeps absolutely. It keeps me in a certain space. So that's that's my point. It's we've got to at some point decide that what I'm hearing is wrong. That's got to be something that I choose myself. What I'm hearing is wrong.
Right, but that's a complete louder voice. I said this last week. I think Black Panthers had it right. And I'll say that. And I don't care how militant they truly were. They were more so promoting self-awareness. They were promoting self-sustainability. They were creating programs to educate, right? That's a louder voice, because so many things that we're hearing today is coming from media. Regardless, like we're getting everything from media. Everything is based off of feelings. Nothing is based off of truth at all at this point. And we have bought into those narratives. And until we can get to a place, us as Black men, and I don't care if it's a corner, like some of the things that we do inside of the jail. I don't care if it's a couple of us getting together to be able to spread our wealth, right? Touch other people that's close to us. I think it all starts in a community. We don't have the leaders like we used to have, right? The leaders are now, they're the sugar-coated preachers. The ones we had back then were actually deep into the neighborhoods. They were for the people, and they were trying to change laws. And I've said this a million times: Black people don't know how to fight. And I say that all the time because guess what? We think it's hooping and hollering and yelling and screaming. Meanwhile, they're changing laws. So we have to have some sort of substance to what we're trying to do in our community, especially when it comes to mental health with an African-American man, a Black man, not African-American, a Black American man inside of this country. But it not only takes us, it all takes the women, because they have to be reprogrammed and how they communicate with a man and how they they have to heal on their side as well, because they're dealing with the same type mentality that we do,
Right.
which is dealing with different types of stresses.
Right. I think it's the I think the delicacy or the delicateness of where this is, including both sides in the conversation. I think as justifiable as history is, there has to be some sort of new accountability, which I believe that we are in the process of doing. But your voice, like you said, Doc, that the voice that I'm encouraging is squandered by the voice to keep us there.
Correct.
And that's all I was saying earlier to you, Chris. It was the fact that the voice needs to come from us in a more positive way about who we are and what we possess. If I can get you to believe in yourself, I believe I eradicate a lot of the mindset that you have. Because here's the deal. If you ask a young black kid today if he can rap or play ball, he doesn't believe he's less than. If he follows what he believes is the pathway to success, he doesn't feel less than. And that's what it truly comes down to. So if he gonna hoop his way in or rap his way in or something, he doesn't feel like he's not okay. He feels like he's fine. That's why the behavior is open to, and they're okay with doing that and following those, because they see that as a pathway out. What we got to do is really instill in them that even that messaging is flawed and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to sustainability of who you are as a person, because as you alluded to, Chris, even the ones that are successful, that go those routes, don't have it completely all together. But the imagery and the belief that I feel about that keeps me from even questioning where I am. So what you said earlier about them allow or wanting it to be okay to go do it, that's wonderful. I want them to be okay, but they don't, because of what they're looking at, they can't fix a problem with the same mind that created it. They still believe that these are the way out. So there's some they're validated by the belief in what makes them feel better. That's why I'm gonna go rap. That's why I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna do those kind of things, because in their opinion, there is nothing wrong with that. And when you come against that imagery, then there's something wrong with you. So I think, again, this whole thing, Doc talked about it with Black Panthers, it comes with an instilling in ourselves a real belief in who we are. Because when I look at you two brothers, Chris, I'll ask you first. What stopped you from ever being who you are? Was there ever a time when you had a mental place that you really weren't where you needed to be?
Absolutely.
And what drove that? Was it history drove it? Was it what you believed about yourself? What drove you to that place?
To get to that negative place?
Yeah.
It's probably history for me.
Okay.
Growing up, not understanding certain aspects of my life that happened to me.
Okay.
And then you internalize all that stuff, and then you're just a product of your surroundings, of what you grew up in. And then
So
as you get older,
you
realize, okay, I need to get some therapy on this.
So what changed you? What happened when you got older? What was it about that experience or those experiences? And what happened when you got older that made you say, I need to change, that my mind's not right? What was it that did that?
Coming to that suicidal place, thoughts of suicide. Yeah.
Okay.
Dealing with those thoughts of suicide. That can't be right.
Doc, what about you?
I think bumps, like bumps on your head. I tell people all the time, change happens at the place of frustration, deep frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, if I'm continuously bumping my head against the wall, something's not working, right? And I had to get to that place of LCE, life-changing experience, something to really open my eyes and focus in. Now, we're continuously doing life how we do life. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there's nothing to drive me to another direction. Mm-hmm. And majority of us are in mundane tasks, the mundane lifestyle that continues on every day doing the exact same thing, and nothing really triggers that.
And nothing really changes.
And nothing really changes, right? You have to get to that place. I say it all the time. At that point, I realized my whole life I had been lied to, right? When I began to feed myself with new information, when I began to read the books, when I began to cut off the TV, because guess what? It wasn't nothing on but negativity on the news anyway. Why am I listening to this all day? And that's a place of quiet where majority of people don't want to be, right? Because this noise here between our two ears is much louder than we care to admit to majority of people, and that's why we have so many things going on around us at all times, right? But when we quiet that noise and begin to introduce new information into our systems, then you start realizing there's some flaws here, right? Relationships that are broken, the yelling, the screaming, the fussing, the arguing. I was listening to something by TD Jakes today. He says if you stay around an abusive relationships long enough, you'll start to believe that's sexy. And we begin to believe a lot of this toxicity that we deal with on a daily basis is sexy, right? It's a part of our everyday lives,
Right.
and it shouldn't be.
Right. It's been sensationalized. It's been given a moniker of this is good. And that's why I believe so too, Chris. It's hard for people to go against something that they now value as good. But let me ask you this again, Chris. The thoughts of suicide, were those based on your lack of belief in where you are, or externally what was going on that you couldn't fulfill?
Don't know.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is because I believe that most men entertain those thoughts because of what's happening outside of them more than what's happening inside. It's usually
I can't say that. I can't say that because at my point of thinking of killing myself, everything around me was going good.
I got you. Okay.
Right, because at that point it was all internal. It was the thoughts that I was ruminating constantly through my mind. It was everything that I had possibly been through. Right, and I tell people all the time, even though you can know something is not true.
Yep.
But the remnants of your lifestyle around you.
Yep.
Are saying yes, this is true.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I knew that. Right. Like I knew that coming out of my marriage. Like I remember her telling me, you're brainwashed by all the books you read. What, personal development? Like I'm brainwashed by business books and personal development. And even though it sounds crazy to you, you begin to think about that. It's chipping away at you when things around you begin to fall apart. So it's still an internal thing that you're always struggling with. It has nothing to do many times with the external. I can be poor, like I can be broke. I've been that, right? But it's the conflict of what everything that happened to get to that point. It's not the external anymore. I don't myself.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I don't think that's when you talked about that. I don't think it's just you just wake up and you just feel that way. I think it's just a duration of time over time, little pieces, little chunks, a tad here, a piece. You know what I'm saying? And then all of that adds up to, damn, you know what? This.
So you start to believe. So again, even though you know the lies that people have told you over the course of your life were not true, and you can say they weren't, everything right now is validating what they're saying.
Yeah.
And it's a chip. It's a chip. It's a chip. It's a chip. It's a punch. It's a chip. It's a chip. It's a chip. And I think that's when we get to that place of mental. I mean, of thinking of suicide.
Right.
And I think that's not spoken enough. I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't feel like that's communicated enough. And I don't think our forms of way we've been taught to communicate with each other holds those principles true. Because if it did, you couldn't, as a wife, as a mother, as a sister, as a brother, you couldn't sit back and just tear a person down, because this is literally killing the other person.
Yeah.
Could be killing the other person.
Right. But when you talk about the chip, Doc, here's what I was getting at, and maybe I misphrased it because both of you kind of said what I was saying. You were talking about what was going on around you. You were saying that you when your wife said that you're this and you're that, that's her. That wasn't you. I'm saying what I'm saying is that was it you not feeling good about you that caused you there, or was it what they were saying about you and what wasn't happening? That's what I'm asking.
It was me.
It all comes back down to you.
It was me. It was me. It was me holding on to all of this stuff.
Buying into whatever the narrative is.
Right. Like, so, I mean, and I'm saying, even looking at my environment at that time, when I was in that place, new place to live, new car, bank account is nice, right? Like everything is okay around me, but it's what's going on in here.
It's
and I don't think we understand how much trash we pick up.
Yeah.
And I don't think people understand how much trash people are dealing with daily.
Yeah.
That's where the mental part comes in, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm eating myself alive inside. It's not what you said, because I'm going to beat myself up 10 times worse. And I think our communication style, I will say that forever in the African American community, the way we talk to each other the way we talk about each other, right? It's horrific. It's horrific, and we call this normal.
Yeah.
I said that earlier. I said that on one of our shows. We grew up playing the dozens, and that was part of the way that you define whether or not you were more superior than somebody else. Is how bad I can tear you down.
Right.
And that's just reality. I see that the
I'm gonna say pause for a second. And the reality with the backdrop of the dozens, that just shows you I'm broke, and I want you to, and I feel bad about me, so I need to figure out how to make you just as broke and feel worse about you.
And again, I believe when we talk about it, it's an internal narrative that exists as accepted culture. And when we accept it as culture, it's accepted as normal. And when it's accepted as normal, we don't think there's anything wrong with it when it comes down to it. So I think, again, that the mental state of where we are is, again, you all have said it, is directly related to who you believe you are, what you're told, and how you are. And that's what my attempt earlier was to say, that I believe that the accountability about this needs to be, and the onus needs to be on us, with the influence of some of the external validation that we do need when it comes down to who we are and who we would like to be. But I think it becomes equally as important to define what it looks like to be a successful person, or I asked Chris this earlier, Doc. I'm gonna ask you before we get off here. What does it look like to be in a healthy state of mind? Can you define that? Can you give it a vision? Because Chris said he didn't think he could, but can you? And maybe we can't. But can you? What would a healthy state of mind look like to a person, or what would that entail?
Quiet, clear thought.
Okay.
Yeah, I think being able to, and I think they talk about it in meditation all the time, right? To have a clear mind, right? A mind of pieces, to be able to slow your brain down to focus on one individual thought. So for me, being in a healthy state is to be able to control my thinking processes versus taking on or continuously, like my word again, ruminate, like everything that's going on until I can slow my brain down and I can focus on one individual thought. I don't think I can have a true healthy mind. Now, there are times where we have multiple things going through our mind at the same time, through business or whatever it may be. But if I can't focus on one path of thought for a long period of time without it taking a left to the negative, or taking a right to the bad relationship, like once we get to that place where we can focus thought, I think we're living in a healthy state.
Chris, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate your mental health as right now?
6, 7.
6, 7. What about you, Doc? On a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh no, I might be like a 1.5. I think I'm crazy. I think I need to check. I got issues. No, I would probably be higher than that, right? Like right now, I think I'm in a really good space. I think I'm in a really good space. I think I'm maybe about 8.
Chris, if you said a 6, well, tell me what in your mind, because we helping people out here. What would you
be? What would you be?
I feel like about 8.5, 8.5, 9.
Yeah.
He just wants to be better than me. I'm telling you, he's still dealing with this red dark skin thing, man. You just wanted to be redder than red, boy.
No, I'm saying
like Kevin Samuel says, on a scale of 1 to 10, 8 ain't even an option.
No, I think that when I say that, Chris, from a standpoint, I think it has everything to do with what Doc talked about. I really believe I'm in a place of peace.
Good.
In a lot of my life. The added relation, huh?
How long have you been there?
I think I creeped up having my new relationship. I think that was a missing piece for me. I don't think any man can be a 10 at all without a spouse.
Okay.
I mean, I know you can say you're a 10 and feel like that, but I think because of the plan of God, the completeness of who we are comes with that significant other. So I think that changed a lot of my and I won't say it brought me more peace, but what it did was it completed something that was still empty that I desired, and having that put me in another place, because now it was something that I really, really wanted, and not only did he deliver, but he delivered in a way that really works for me.
I got you. So real quick, so before Evie Because Evie put you to an 8. What will you be for Evie?
But she got my, so I said about 8.5 now.
So she gave you a half, or she gave you 8?
No, she got me 8.5.
Okay.
I close to 9, but I think 7.5 or 8.
Okay.
Because I just believe that when it comes down to it, and that has to do with me. That has to do with a belief that I want to be some. I'm like Doc said, I'm 3 times harder on myself than anybody else would ever be. So I'm going to look at me because I want constant improvement to be in my daily approach to life. So that's why I do that when it comes down to it. But I can say this: post my divorce, I was at a different level of peace. I think I'm at a different level of completion now. But I think I've been at that level of peace when it comes down to it, in the midst of what I was going through, in the midst of still dealing with Ish on a regular. It's how I deal with myself. And I believe it has to do with the surrounding of people in my life too, Chris. I think that the amount of 8.5 that I have in my life now is because of the folk that are in my life. You know, it's who I got rid of and who has now been a part of my life. So I think that's, and I said those are choices. Those are things that I decided to do, and thankfully God moved people I didn't have to move. That was a beautiful piece of it.
I like
when it came down to it. But it really has everything to do with the people that I can pick the phone up and call, the people that respect my space when I need it. The people, because I think that's as equally important. It's one thing to have somebody on the side. It's another thing for somebody to understand when you need your moment.
And I think that's where I think that's what I've done, right? Like I think I had to think about it like yesterday or today. I was just sitting back and I was kind of thinking of that. And I said, I have no one in my life that frustrates me as of today, as of yesterday, right? I have nobody in my life that mentally takes me off balance. And as I'm getting older, you know, hell, I ain't gonna lie, you know, ever since September, I've been thinking about that 40. I didn't even realize how old I was until September, right? Like, so I've really been thinking about what type of life do I want to live my second half, right? And what type of people do I want to have around me? Because ultimately, that's what's going to count in the next 40 years, right? When you're sick, you're out, all of these things that's going on in your life, right? Like, it's going to be the relationships that you have that are going to keep you into that place of sanity, right? And so I think we all have to get to that place to begin to look at the relationships that we have around us, because a lot of times that's what's mentally holding us back.
Draining you. Absolutely.
That's what's draining us, right? That's what's draining us emotionally, these relationships that we have around us. And until we get to that place where we're really focused on that peace, right? That Zoe life. I remember Coach used to always talk about the Zoe life, right? Like, so we really get to that place where who was causing the most frustration and pain in my life and start to move those people out, I guarantee the clarity of mental health will begin to come back to you. When you get the folk around you that speak life into you, and that's all the Bible talks about, like encouraging someone else, when you start getting those people out into your life, and the people that are toxic for no reason, that want to argue for no reason, who want to fuss for no reason, who want to gossip for no reason, when they start getting out of your life, I believe mental health amongst all of us will begin to rise a bit. But there's so many people that's focused on being negative, right? There's so many people in our culture that believes negativity is a way of life. I remember even in the Facebook group, I kicked like 500-600 people out one day, like 500-600 people. And they were just tearing down the business. They want to start a whole nother group so they can be open and honest and be able to tear down businesses. Think about that for a second, right? Us as African-American culture, we're excited about tearing down a business to the point where we'll move to start an entire another group because the person who runs that one won't let us tear down people. Do you even see the mentality behind it?
That's the mentality of the Trauma Tribe. The Trauma Tribe is so attractive, and that's what I'm saying earlier, Doc, before you got on. It's so amazing that the things we want to be free from, we are the direct progenitors of making it happen. We do our own stuff. That's why I was saying, Chris, earlier, that I believe that it's us. Now, I know where you went, and I didn't want to get away from that. But I really believe if we're going to really talk to people about helping people there, and that's why I went early. I went there in early in the discussion, but it was more or less, it's our responsibility. It's what are we sharing with people? And it's what are we doing? What are we walking out? What epistle are we living in front of them? And that's why I asked you, Chris. I was asking you because there are a lot of people that feel that way. And when we talk about having thoughts of suicide at a 6 or at a 7 or whatever the number is, I wanted you to be able to share with people how you identified it and moved through it and past it,
Sure.
right? Because I think that's a big piece for conversation. You know, if we feel that way, what led us to feel that way, and then secondly, how am I dealing with this now? And do those things come back if I'm healed or I'm not healed? Do they come back, or how do you move forward through that past that feeling you had?
I think for me, growing up, I've always felt this sense of inadequacy, not good enough. There has been some things in my life that placed that on my heart that you wasn't good enough. And so I think I've carried that throughout my life. So that's why I work really, really hard to overcome that feeling all the time. I'm gonna be the best podium presenter. I'm gonna be the, you know what I'm saying? I'm a dress better than everybody else. When I come in, you know what I'm saying? So we're always playing this catch up, right? But it's based upon that feeling of being inadequate, or the feeling of inadequacy or not good enough. The imposter syndrome, as a psychologist, was the imposter syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. So when you get to that point where things are not working, going through the divorce process, life is just crumbling down, and then you just feel like, is this it? Like, I done came this far for this? Like, so for me, the turning point was, okay, you've come this far, and you, in your mind, you feel like this is it. But guess what? It can't be over because you're still breathing. Mm-hmm. So there's still something else. Mm-hmm. Listen, the reality is this. If God wants you out of here, my belief system is this. If God wants you out of here, he don't need your help. Mm-hmm. He don't need you to step in front of a train. He don't need you to take a gun. He don't need you to take no pill. When he ready to call you home, trust me, just like that, he gonna call you home.
Now let me ask you this, Chris. Was that thought more about what you had in you, or was that thought about the people in your life that needed you? When you really thought about what you had to resolve and rectify, was that about, oh no, Chris Allen needs this because Chris Allen got something to do, or was it because, you know what, I got people here?
I think it was a little bit of both. Okay. For me, it was just a little bit of both. You know, I always thought about the people that I am leaving behind, my two boys that I'm leaving behind. That's going. Right. I'm sowing this seed on their life. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So I thought about that, but then I also thought about it's not over yet. Okay. And I really had that thought. I remember going through that process, and the thought that came to my mind was, Chris, God don't need your help in this season. He don't need your help to end it right now. Right. I know you're going through the pain. I know you feel a particular way, but obviously if he's giving you another opportunity to breathe, brother, there's still some more that you got to do. Mm-hmm. Because
when I got that deep. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think I ever got that deep.
See?
I don't think it was a God thing. I think it was more so.
Well, you didn't get saved till a couple weeks ago, anyway.
Yeah, like about 3.5. No, I mean, even in that time, I'm reading the Bible. I remember when after the divorce happens, I'm trying to rebuild my business and looking at everything that was going on around my life at that point in time, right? And it was times like, man, why don't you just end it? Like, just kill yourself. Like, this would be so much easier if you just die. Right? It's so much easier. Like, I can just kill myself. I can get it over with. It don't say nothing about suicide in the Bible. It says as long as I repent, right? Like, I think people think of it, you know what I'm saying? It never says that in anything about that in the Bible. So it's like, okay, I can do this. But at the same time, for me, it was more so the fight in me. Right? I think it was more so I can't lose like this. Mm-hmm. Right. And then the thought, if I tried to kill myself, you know, my luck, I'd just be messed up the rest of my life.
That was my whole thing.
My whole job be off, but I'll still be here trying
to mess it up. Exactly.
I think that played a part, but I don't think God ever came in the picture. It was more so you can't. Like, you gotta win, right? Like, you have to get back to where you want it to be. Right. And I don't think at that point mental health was, I would tell you, it was 2. It was maybe a 2, maybe a 3. I was operating on what most people call, what they say, fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. No, because I was in a depressed state and I had no one to talk to. And the people around me, and that's why I said go back to who is around you. The people around me were the ones that were tearing me down more than anything.
There you go.
Like the negativity that I was absorbing, right? Everyone in my life, I believe at that point, had something they had to say about my life. And that's where I'm really at the point now. And going into my 40s is like, no, like these relationships that we hold on to are the ones that are hurting us the most.
Right.
You can lose money because you can get it back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll hurt for a minute, but I know I can get the money back.
Right.
But it's the relationships that break us.
Yeah.
Right? It's those bonds that are internal. It's the people that I need to hear I love you from that's not telling you I love you. It's the people that you need to hear I'm proud of you from that aren't that aren't
external validation. Yeah.
Correct. You need those people in your life, and that's 2 by 2. And I think that was designed that way for us to encourage each other. And that's why it was stated so many times in the Bible. But if you've been broken and you have a such thing, you have the trauma that you're walking around with, there's no way that you can uplift someone else because you're miserable and you won't get helpful.
Yep.
Right.
So we have to get to that point where we're having healed individuals around us. So we're having these conversations about sitting down and talking to someone, a therapist, a psychiatrist, like someone else, because your faith, your belief, your happiness can really be instilled in someone else. But if you're not in that place, all you're doing is tearing down that other individual.
Right.
That's good.
Right. Right.
And that's as an African American community, I hate it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I hate it. We steal from each other. We tear each other down. We argue. We talk about, and it's all based off our own insecurities. And instead of dealing with our own insecurities, we much rather project what we're feeling inside onto other people.
Exactly.
Right? Every fear we have, we gotta project it onto you.
No doubt.
Right? If I'm angry, I gotta make you angry.
You gotta make you angry.
Right? And it's sad. It's sad for us. No one ever wants to say, "Oh, I'm insecure." But let me help you out real quick. We all insecure in some shape, form, or fashion. Right? But are they ruling your life?
No doubt.
Are they making the decisions for you? Are your insecurities pushing away the good people and holding on to the people who mean you no good?
And 9 times out of 10, that's what's happening, Doc.
Correct.
You
Correct.
become the very thing that you fear the most.
Correct.
Because most of us don't want. We say we want the healing, but we really don't because we found comfort in the trauma and in the negativity.
We don't even know we're negative.
Correct. And
that's
we say we're keeping it real.
Right. We don't know we're negative. We're the negative out of the bunch. You're the most negative person in the bunch, and you think it's everybody else crazy. Because we have to see something different.
Right. And that's that's our responsibility to show them something different. But when the repeated narrative is this whole scenario, it stays true in the forefront.
Right.
And now conversations that can be helpful and life-changing are dismissed because now you don't like the one that's crazy because you are totally against what everybody else talking about.
Right.
And we trust what you hear the most, whether it's right, wrong, and different. You trust what you hear the most. And go ahead.
I seen something the other day. It just, somewhat completely warmed my heart, right? Like, I was out with a customer and we were looking at 2 different houses, right? One house was priced significantly higher than the other house. And we sat down, we started doing prices with the customer. It's a husband and his wife. And he you can see the love like coming out of him, you know what I'm saying, towards his wife. And we were looking at the first property and they seen how much they had to bring to the table. And his wife just kind of looked over at me. And she had this weird look on her face, right? And so I kind of told the agent, hold on a moment. Like, let's step outside. Let's talk about how y'all feeling, right? And he sat there, the husband sat there and talked with her. The wife stepped out with me and she says, Adrian, no. She said, I don't want the house. He said, Adrian, because he's going to kill himself to get me that house.
Ooh.
He said
we can unpack that in itself.
He said he's going to kill himself to try to get me this house. He said, could we really find another house that's much cheaper? Because I love my husband, but I don't love him to the point of killing myself for a house. And I just thought about how much caring that had to be for a woman to a man. That even though this is her dream house, she knows her husband can get it for her. She didn't want him to work to a point where it hurt him. And I think about that as a culture. What have we thought about
Oh, you gonna get you 2, 3, 4 jobs. If it means that you finna bless her with that house, the house that she wants, so she can ride around good, you better go get you 2, 3, 4 jobs.
But what if we had that type of concern for one another?
Right.
Like we really wanted to lift up. And this time, I'm talking about in black. I'm just talking about that's not just relationships. Like, what if we had that type of concern for everybody around us? Well, we don't want to see you struggle. We don't want to see you in pain. We don't want to see you hurt. Like, what if we all lifted each other up there or had some type of respect or understanding for the people around us? Like, where will we be as a culture? Because guess what? Everybody else is lifting each other up and everybody else is ensuring that they don't have to work as hard as we do. What if we had that same type of care in our own environment, man? And I think that's the hardest part when you see that type of love someone has for someone else and we can't even get none of that.
Right.
Like, half the time men ain't getting in their own household. And I thought that was the most beautiful thing in the world.
Powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That's a topic in itself.
And I think that ultimately sits on the word trust. I mean, it comes down to she just trusts her love for him. She knows who he is. I'm okay with saying no to something because it's who I respect this person. I know what he's going to be like. And I think that has everything to do with where we are today. We have to get to a better place of we know who we are, who we're supposed to be, who we should be like. That's why relationships are so important. If that person isn't edifying you and uplifting you, then you are going to, Chris, as you said, reduce yourself to please someone else. And what we do is we self-inflict oftentimes the mental place and anxiety we put ourselves in because we put it on ourselves trying to please or do for other folks.
Right.
And that's why I believe that's a big piece of men's challenge out here, regardless of color. Their challenge out here is providing that. Like you said, my man would have done it. Why? Because it's so important for us to wear that accomplishment. That to us becomes edification and approval. That becomes to us, something that we did, something we can hold on to. But at the end of the day, it does present us with another case of dealing with our own selves internally. And if I didn't get to the house, now I feel less than a dude.
Right.
He took all that pressure off of him when it came down to it. And now he's even more of a man at this point because of where you truly have positioned yourself in life. And now you can live the blissful Zoe life the way God intended it every day that you exist. And that's what we should have. So it's been another Monday edition of Men Unfiltered. My bad. I forgot this many podcasts. I forgot. So Men Unfiltered. Just so you all know, we are now on Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Wait a minute. What is it? Spotify, Amazon, all your podcasts. We on them now. So you can go in and look up Men Unfiltered, and we're on every podcast platform that there is now. So this will be the first one you can download. We're gonna put some old ones up as well, but look for Men Unfiltered on your podcast where you listen to and follow us, like us, listen to us, and hopefully we will impact your life. So I'm the real GM, the health evangelist, Grayson Marshall Jr. It's been a Monday edition of Men Unfiltered, coming in late, but never like God. He always on time.
Dr. Adrian, the 8th century.
And the man in the co-pilot seat who brings the perspective and the balance to this show, as always, is none other than
Chris Allen, On the Grind Coach. Go check us out on the grind, onthegrindgear.com, onthegrindgear.com.
And we'll have links to all their sites. We'll have a link to Dr. Real Estate Jax on there as well. But go to your main Spotify hubs and you'll find Men Unfiltered starting tomorrow. So we just appreciate y'all for joining us. Thank you for spending time with us. Have a good night, and we'll see you next Monday. God bless. Peace. All right.